does he have lips then if he's talking? So we actually spent an awful lot.
Venom lips. That's something I don't think I would ever think about until right now. So.
It's something you have to think about because if you talk a lot, you have to be able to make shapes with your lips. And FYI, he does have like a very thin lips, just enough so that he can convey some.
Venom lips confirmed. First exclusive. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to a very special edition of the Movie Podcast. My name is Daniel, and this is our exclusive interview with Senior Art Director Jacinda Chu of Insomniac Games. Joining alongside me, swinging along through the city, are my fellow Spider-Man. It is Shabazz.
Hello, hello, hello. I'm Australian Spider-Man.
It's Australian Spider-Man. Oh, I like it. And Anthony.
Sorry, is there someone cleaning a window in here? Like, what's going on?
Is someone spraying Windex?
Hold
on.
I
mean, we are swinging through the city, so maybe there's a lot of buildings that we leave webs on. Anthony's just thinking ahead. Now, Shabazz, you did pull up a little box there. What did you have there?
I've got my Spider-Man 2 DualSense that I didn't show during our discussion about the game, but I thought I might as well show it now. But this is the box. Inside the box was once a controller, and if you're watching this on YouTube, there is a slight possibility, depending on how this is cropped. Anthony's probably shaking his head like, no, you may see the controller back there somewhere, but who knows, depending on
it probably will be not in this scene. No?
in the IMAX release of this video, you'll see it though. The IMAX,
in the IMAX release, you will see it.
70 millimeter
70 millimeter version. Yes.
Exactly that. Now, Shabazz, you were going to say something before I called out your controller.
Yeah, no, just really quick. Like, I wasn't thinking about that, but what do they do with all the webs? Like, they disintegrate. I know that. Like, but they must be bad for the environment. They must be like, is he
biodegradable,
Spider-Man?
I think I would hope they're biodegradable. I think
so.
Our Peter, he's a smart boy.
He's a smart
Miles,
boy.
like, this web fluid, I think if anything will be to help the environment, right? As we saw in Harry's,
it helps close the ozone layer. It helps.
I want a
yeah,
movie.
I think that's it. Just web the ozone layer.
I want a movie on the like a documentary style movie of how they clean up Spider-Man's spider fluid all over the city.
I love that. Well, there was that game. I think it was the Spider-Man 2 game, right, where they had like all of the webs like in the city, or was that even just an ad for the film, where they were just like all the webs were everywhere, and they're just like, oh my god, we have to clean all of these. Yeah, that'd be a lot of webs. That should have been a question I asked Jacinda, because again, she is the senior art director. She's been at Insomniac for over 20 years, and she's somebody that anytime an Insomniac game has been coming out, we loved watching her interviews and just hearing what her team brought to the vision of the game. And we have an incredible discussion lined up for you. I want to say thank you to our friends at PlayStation Canada and at Insomniac and Marvel Games for making this opportunity happen for us. I got to go to LA on behalf of the Movie Podcast team to go play Spider-Man 2 early. Go check out our preview. That is a whole other video. That is a whole other episode out with tons of new gameplay footage. You don't want to miss that. That's out now in all podcast feeds and on YouTube. So make sure we'll put a little banner somewhere here that you could go click on that after this interview, so you go catch our impressions, because there's so much incredible goodiness in there that you don't want to miss. But yeah, what an exciting time. I am so grateful for the opportunity, and I know we're so grateful for the opportunity. We had some incredible stuff going on this week on the Movie Podcast with TIFF, with in-person interviews, with being Rotten Tomatoes accredited. There's been a huge week for us here on the show. So for all of you listening, all of you watching right now, whether it's on podcast feeds, on YouTube, we're doing this. We're having these opportunities because of you supporting us. We cannot thank you enough. We love what we're doing. We want to keep doing it because we love the Movie Podcast and we love talking entertainment with you. So thank you for sticking around. Please join our Discord. We have a great community in there. If you want to talk about Spider-Man 2, you know what? Let's open up a channel. Shay, I think this week that as you're listening to this, we should have a Spider-Man 2 channel up. Let's get the hype. Let's get that ball rolling so we could get all excited and get into the Spider-Man 2 feels, because it's coming. October 20th is just around the corner. And this is just the beginning of our coverage. Like I said, our hands-on impression video is out now, also an audio version. And this is our interview with Jacinda Chu. We had a great time. We spoke about a lot. There's some exclusive news in this one too, with Spider-Man Noir suit going to be coming out, Venom having lips, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's lots in here. For both of you, before we get to our interview, I just want to ask, what were your highlights for this interview for you guys listening?
I think for me, it was the little bit at the end that she says, like, this is something, and I don't want to spoil it, but this is something that they've really been working on and they're really proud of, and they really want people to play. And it's a very specific moment at the end where Jacinda talks about some of the maybe extracurricular things within the game.
For me, it was the technical achievements they've accomplished, and the engineering team behind all the new things that we're going to be able to experience with our new PS5s, and kind of ushering in the next gen of PlayStation games. Like, I think we've been waiting for a long time. I think the only game that I can think of right now off the top of my head, Ratchet Clank, and it's also from Insomniac. And here we are with Spider-Man, and I can't wait what the future looks like for all the other games like Wolverine and what they're going to do with that. So yeah, it's the technical stuff that really gets me excited.
It's a very exciting time. There is so much to look forward to. Like I said, Spider-Man 2 on PS5 will be out very, very soon on October 20th. Thank you to our friends at PlayStation Canada, Marvel Games, Insomniac for making this all happen for us. Please welcome to the Movie Podcast, Senior Art Director of Insomniac Games, Jacinda Chu.
Jacinda, thank you so much for sharing your time with us on the Movie Podcast today. We are so grateful for being here and for playing this game. I think it was very hard to pull me away. But yeah, I think seeing the level of detail in this world is absolutely amazing. What are your thoughts going into a sequel of probably one of the most beloved games, the most anticipated games of the year?
I think when we're making a sequel, we want to make sure that we preserve everything that was really cool about the first game, and then add to it, So, I mean, one of the first things we did was we want to make sure that the art style is still consistent, because I know some folks were like, oh no, well, Venom is in the game now. Is it going to be really dark? And maybe people want that too, but it will be a little bit darker. But we want to make sure that the game still has like the punchy, vibrant colors it's known for. I mean, we've released some key art with sort of screenshots with Venom, and it's still colorful in Times Square, So, there's that. Just keeping that same art style. But then also adding like new things, right? So for us, it was obviously adding Brooklyn and Queens, which almost doubles the size of the game. And Brooklyn and Queens is really interesting because it's very geographically different than Manhattan. You don't have the giant skyscrapers. And then Brooklyn and Queens is also where Peter and, Peter's from Queens, Miles is from Brooklyn. And just be able to offer like different types of geography, I guess. So you can get like standalone houses, things are lower. But you can still swing seamlessly from one side of the map.
I think that's one of the things that blew me away, was just diving into where we started the demo and just feeling like I could go anywhere, I could swing anywhere, and you're just so immersed right away. And I think one of the things that was so special about the first game was that, like, seeing that big white spider and knowing that Insomniac wanted to do their own version of what's familiar but what's different. What was your approach going into a sequel where you have these iconic characters? You have Venom. We have a very big Venom picture just off frame right now. What was your thought process going in and making sure that these characters who are so iconic were still recognizable, but also having an Insomniac flair to them?
I mean, one of the first things we do when we're working on these Marvel characters is just looking at what was done before in the comics, figure out what's classic about them, but then also giving it our own Insomniac spin. And I also talk about Venom. Everyone's known for Venom. But Venom in the comics, he's deceptively simple, right?
Right.
He just looks like a bigger version of Spider-Man in like the black suit. But one of the things I noticed right away was that while Spider-Man emotes through his eyes and his quips, he doesn't have a mouth.
Right.
But Venom has a mouth. And one of the first things I asked Brian Intihar, creative director, was, well, what's Venom going to do with this mouth? Is he going to be talking?
Yeah.
And then if so, how much? And then is he going to be using it for attacks? Does he have lips then if he's talking? So we actually spent an awful lot.
Venom lips. That's something I don't think I would ever think about until right now. So.
It's something you have to think about because if you talk a lot, you have to be able to make shapes with your lips. And FYI, he does have like a very thin lips, just enough so that he can convey some.
Venom lips confirmed. First exclusive. Thank you.
For the most part, he's almost like a skull when his mouth opens. But we actually put a lot of effort into making that mouth. You know, the bigger his jaw gets, the more the teeth elongate, the more they can splay out.
Right.
And at some point, his jaw actually can unhinge as well. So a lot of time and effort and technology went into that jaw. And then I think the other really big one was just translating the size of Venom and the shape of Venom into game, because we wanted to make sure he looked both powerful but also fast, because he's obviously made out of this semi-liquid material. So we actually did a lot of sketches and a couple of versions of his size. You know, how big is big? How big is too big? Is it too small? And we put it in the game. And at some point when we all played it, we were like, that's the size. So that's kind of how we figured out Venom and what made him fun but cool in our game.
I love that. And I think what's so funny too, seeing the statue, the 19 inches of Venom out front, seeing how large he is compared to Peter and to Miles, it's really staggering. But they're not the only ones getting like redesigned. So we're also seeing like new looks for MJ, new looks for Peter and for Miles. How are those looks evolving, tied to the story that you guys want to tell this time around? Because we're 9 months later from the first game.
Yes. I mean, I start with Peter because in the first game, he is struggling to pay his rent, and he's, trying to figure out what he's going to do with his life after he's graduating from college. At the beginning of this game, he also has financial problems.
Right. I mean, it's not Peter Parker if he's not having some money issues, right?
Right. Yeah. So he's obviously inherited Aunt May's house. He doesn't want to give up the house, but he's struggling to pay the mortgage. So he has to be even more of an adult, because before, if it was just him, it was okay if he lived in a studio apartment. Right. But now he doesn't own a house. So we did try to make his clothing more sophisticated, just slightly. So he's not wearing his funny science T-shirts anymore, although I'm sure he's got some he wears on the weekends.
Right.
And he's no longer wearing his hoodies now. So he is a little bit older. So he wears, button-up shirts, a little bit more tailored. And then Miles, in contrast, in the first game, he was kind of like the younger brother. Right. So he was wearing something very similar to Peter. He had like really cute cartoon shirts, he had the hoodies. But in this one, because he also is trying to find himself, figure out who he is, I really pushed his look to make sure that he was trying to find his own way. Yeah. And it's reflected in how he looks. So he's got his hairstyle. His clothes are no longer so simple. He definitely likes the bigger, oversized clothes that are really graphic and colorful. Very, very different.
I love that. And there's this Pixar quote that I always think of about how the art challenges the technology and the technology inspires the art. How has the power of the PS5 now? I've seen the game, I've played the game, and see how much detail, and just I've seen how much I feel like the PS5 is being pushed to create probably one of the most beautiful looking games I've ever seen. How are you guys leveraging now that new power? Because this is exclusive for PS5. How are you leveraging that now to, have the detail that you do and to have a story this time around?
I mean, obviously when you have a system as powerful as the PS5, you can just get more of everything. So our lighting is definitely higher fidelity and more realistic than ever. Our reflections in particular, I am so impressed by what our engineering team is able to do, because our reflections are also very, very high fidelity. You're seeing more reflected in RE4 and at super high fidelity. And not only that, the draw distances are ridiculous.
Yeah, with a map this size, it's like I feel like I could see forever and not just see it, but I could go to it.
Yeah, and one of the other things too is just getting on those web wings, because before when you swung on the webs, which don't get me wrong, I love swinging, you're kind of limited by the attach points.
Right.
But those web wings can get you really far up above the city, and to be able to see that view is something that we work really hard on.
Yeah, and I think another thing, just because I always was thinking, okay, what are things in the first game that I always would run into, and I'm curious how they were solved or changed this time around. I noticed when I was swinging across to the other island, and it's just like you're on the water, now you could skid on the water, then jump off the water. So it's like you're seeing like these little improvements like here and there that it's so cool to see that. And I'm glad you brought up the web wings and just the suits in general in this game. How did you even begin to start planning the level of customization, the colors, the amount of suits? Because I know in the demo we played, there was a few different suits. There's going to be a lot more suits based on the pre-orders and everything we've been seeing. Where do you even begin to look at like what ones do we want? What are we going to create, and what's going to be original to the game?
I feel like I feel like I need to start taking bribes or something. Everyone's like, why did you do this? Why did you do that? And I confess that's a little bit of this, a little bit of that. So there's 3 types of suits in the game. Suits that are from the previous game, or perhaps inspired by, MCU or cross, just news of stuff from the Spider-Verse universe. And then the second tier are the comic book suits, so ones we drag over from the comics. And then the third bucket are unique or custom suits for the game. So maybe they're tied to narrative, maybe they're part of DDE. And then among those suits, it is a little bit subjective in terms of which ones we do bring over, bring over from the previous titles and which ones we bring over that brand new. But for the most part, we try to just get a lot of variety. So maybe we'll pick some suits like the Arachnite suit, which has a cape, because we want to get some of the cape, stuff in. Or maybe the Noir suit from Spider-Verse, we want that in. Then other suits, because we don't want everything to have cape, maybe we want something that's like a big sweatshirt that Marines can wear. So a lot of it is actually just making sure, hopefully, that there's something for everyone, because it's impossible to please everybody.
Right.
But it's really just making sure that we have a breadth of suits. Is how we normally make those kinds of decisions.
But I mean, like, I know you said it's impossible to please everyone. I'm like, how could you not be pleased with what we've gotten so far? I mean, I remember like the amount of suits that you guys were dropping for the first game, and as the Christmas present with the Raimi suit, and just like from there, it's so special to see how the first game evolved, and now coming back to this one, seeing how this one is going to evolve too. I'm curious because we're in such a renaissance right now with Spider-Man, and I think back to the first game dropping in 2018. We had Into the Spider-Verse come out that year. Now Across the Spider-Verse is out, and then this game is following it this fall. We're in such an amazing time period for Spider-Man. What inspirations are you guys looking at? Not just at the suits, but are you looking at the different types of designs and the looks that Across the Spider-Verse, or even like the Tom Holland films have brought, like, and kind of informed your take on Spider-Man?
For the most part, the movies and the animation and the video game suits are all kind of on their own tracks. And we respect that.
Of course, yeah.
We love what everyone else is doing. But for us, when we make a unique suit, or even if we're working with, say, our DDE artists, we try to carve our own path. And a lot of it's really reflective in the narrative. And I want to tell you so much because we haven't revealed some of this stuff.
I know.
I hope that, I guess, fans will have to just play the game and discover it themselves.
Yeah, I know. There's a lot to look forward to. I know there's so much that I want to talk about. The black suit is this one that's, I remember Brian the first time around was when he would talk about that suit. It's like, you know what, that's a special suit. We don't want to just have that suit in the game without it meaning something. Now having it in this game, how excited has the team been to really, again, you guys have done the Insomniac way and not just created just a black looking suit. It has like a living organism to it. Where did you guys begin with trying to, figure out that look?
Man, I'm so glad you mentioned that. Because that was intentional. So the black suit from the comics is very simple. It's deceptively simple, right? It just looks like an inverted Spider-Man suit.
Right.
It's very plain black with a white spider. So the first time we tried it, we actually did something really simple. But it seems kind of funny if that black and white suit is made out of cloth.
Right.
It just didn't seem right. So then we were like, we need to pull the narratives into it. And we want to make sure it looks like there's some symbiote influence. Right. Which is where you get like that constantly moving kind of semi-liquid symbiote ocean. And even there's tendrils that were embedded into the suit as well. And the cool thing about that too is that we want not only the player to feel like, oh, something's not quite right, we want the other characters in a narrative to notice that as well. And you notice that obviously one of our demos where, it's making Peter more aggressive, and Miles and Genki notice it. Right. Because we want them to think, wow, this is super powerful, but something doesn't seem right with it. So we definitely made it slightly creepy as well. Yeah.
No, I'm curious for you. There's obviously so much in this game, and I know there's so much you want to talk about. But is there something particular, something very specific that made into the game that you notice it every time you see demos? You're just like, I'm so glad that we were able to get this to work, or make this get into the game.
For me, one of my favorite things in the game is probably our night lighting. Because one of the things I really wanted to figure out in the first game was to make our night lighting look more realistic, in that we want the world to feel a little bit darker. Because in real life, the city is quite dark at night. But then the problem is that it doesn't always work for gameplay. So for us to get the right balance of, darkness and lightness, and making it look more like real life, but then also still making it usable, that was a big challenge for us. And I feel like we really solved it. And then the other kind of fun thing that I hope players will discover pretty quickly is that we've actually added interiors to a lot of the buildings. So now when you're crawling on a building, you can see people inside. Yeah. And it kind of adds a whole other layer of depth to the city.
It does, and when you see just how detailed the city is, I don't think I was expecting it to look as. I knew it was going to look amazing, but when you see the level of detail across the game and in the menus and all these like little things, there's so much that people may not even see their first time around, right? And I think as someone who I've played the first game in Miles Morales probably like 5 or 6 times each, and it's like you feel like you're finding something new every time. It's really special, and I'm curious for you, someone who's been at Insomniac for so long, what has kept you there all these years, and what keeps surprising you with the team?
One of the things I love about Insomniac is that we do a lot of self-reflection. So we'll kind of finish something and then we ask ourselves, well, what could be better? And then we're constantly pushing ourselves. And I love the fact that we will always go back and just figure out, man, we should have done this better. We should have heard this. But then also that sense of camaraderie and teamwork, I feel we're definitely like one of those teams that leverages all of the ideas and thoughts and input from the entire team to inform what we're doing next on the next game. And I think that's what makes Insomniac super special, because everyone there is either, a hardcore gamer, Spider-Man fan, you name it. And we're all able to contribute different things to the project.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I know there's so much to look out for. I'm so excited for October 20th. I don't think there's a game that has had me this excited in a very long time. And to see what you guys are doing with Spider-Man and Wolverine down the road, I think we're just going to have an amazing time in the next couple of years with Marvel and Insomniac.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And by the way, can I just give one pro tip to anyone who's playing the game?
Please, give the pro tips. We love them.
So we've added a lot of great side content, which hopefully you got to experience today. But one of the things I know people love about our game is just the amount of narrative and story that we have in the world. So we've definitely made a big effort and push to put a lot of narrative into the side content. So I would tell people to please play those optional missions because you will see some really cool surprises.
Yeah, I think just, again, I won't spoil anything now, but just seeing little symbols and things there, like there's a lot going on in this world, and it's going to just be something that just consumes my life, and it's going to consumes everyone's life when it comes out. So Jacinda, I just want to say thank you so much for your time. We absolutely love the work that you and the team are doing. We're such huge fans on the Movie Podcast, so thank you so much, and I really hope we get to talk to you again.
Thank you.